What's up, college football fans? Welcome back to an all-new episode of the Cover 2 College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Smithson, joined, as always, by my co-host, the Okie Longhorn himself, Dalt. How are we doing tonight?
Doing good. I'm excited. Big weekend ahead. A lot of college football playoff implications coming this week. Excited to have our good friend BP on, even though he's going to say a lot of ridiculous shit. But
yeah, so we do have our good buddy Bailey Puckett. He has joined the show tonight. We felt we would be remiss if we did not have him on with his Oklahoma State Cowboys facing off against your Texas Longhorns this weekend down in Arlington. So I guess, BP, I'll ask you like I did Dalt. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm good. It's big weekend. We weren't supposed to be here, so we're excited.
Look at it. It's like the Paul
I say
Rudd
we as I'm going to be there Saturday,
us.
but hey, look at us.
well, look at me and BP, not really look at you.
That's what I meant. That's fine. I already know this is going to backfire on me totally tonight because y'all are going to pick on me, even though I have nothing to do with any of this. But fellas, we got quite a bit of stuff to talk about tonight. Obviously, we're going to give probably our quickest recap of the year, Dalt, on our games that we picked last week. And we've got conference championship games this week. We've got some coaching news, obviously, that's kind of at the forefront. And then we've got a new CFP playoff poll or rankings. Going to talk about those, talk about some scenarios. Those rankings just dropped earlier tonight. So I guess we can kind of get right into things. Our first real bit of news we're going to talk about. We've got some coaching hires around college football. One of the biggest being the Texas A&M Fighting Aggies. They have hired a head coach, Dalt, and everybody thought on, what was it, Saturday night? Sunday morning? Yeah, Saturday night, everybody thought it was going to be Mark Stoops. Apparently the boosters and whoever was not going to be happy with that. So we go and get Mike Elko. So Mike Elko will be the next head coach. He's had his introductory press conference. He's coming over from Duke. He was formerly at Texas A&M as the defensive coordinator before he went over to Duke as the head coach. Fellas, I'll let both of y'all talk. What do we think of this hire as a whole? And either one of you can go first. It doesn't matter who, whichever.
Go ahead, BP.
For the press conference that man had to do, I mean, what an introduction. But nobody can introduce a coach quite like Texas A&M. But I guess I did not realize that Duke is now 6-6. Is that correct?
7-5.
Yes.
They're 7-5. So we were mad about Stoops, but we're juiced about Elko. So I just feel like Duke is 7-5 in the ACC, which is hot garbage. So,
I mean,
I don't
know
get
you
it.
probably have opinions
I just
on this.
don't.
What do you think, Elko, Dalt?
I think that there was a strategic reasoning behind Coach Elko over Coach Stoops. Coach Stoops is a good coach. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but he was going to bring. They were more worried about what the players on the team were going to do if Coach Stoops was there. He already had players. After this broke, they were talking about what in the hell, players were legitimately worried about Coach Stoops, and I think that's where the pushback come from, the board. And then whenever you bring Elko in, you get to save a guy like Elijah Robin, or E-Rob, as they call him, your defensive line coach, who is a recruiting machine. If Mark Stoops shows up, there's probably a good possibility that he gets poached away from A&M. So it is the most Texas A&M thing to kind of try to keep their players happy with that quote-unquote greatest recruiting class of all time. but we'll see. I like Coach Elko. I mean, that's as a Longhorns fan, what he does with his offensive coordinator hire is going to be the biggest important key for keeping said team together.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is going to have to hire an offensive coordinator because they're firing guys left and right. And we heard today that Bobby Petrino, formerly OC at A&M, he's heading back to Arkansas, not as the head coach, but going to be the OC at the place that he was the coach at. So, good for him, I guess. That's great. But I told you all and VP both
a motorcycle
a
wreck.
motorcycle wreck to be more of a motorcycle wreck for sure. I think A&M is. I think they fumbled this with Mark Stoops, and I know that there's a little bit of disagreement there, but I think Mark Stoops is a better coach than Elko. I think he's a more proven coach than Elko. He's had 2 10-win seasons at a basketball school that hasn't really never been known for football. They had the likes of Bear Bryant, who they basically got rid of for the same reason that Mark Stoops and John Calipari fight all the time, because Kentucky wanted to take basketball more serious than football. And then you saw what Bear Bryant went and did at Alabama. I just think it's typical A&M, and I'm not going to discredit Elko. I think he could potentially be a great coach for A&M. But I just think the people that are downplaying Mark Stoops and acting like that would have been a bad hire, I don't think that there is any kind of evidence to justify that. It's like, well, yeah, you can say he struggled at Kentucky, but it's Kentucky. The only reason anybody even talks about Kentucky in the Southeastern Conference is because of Mark Stoops and what he's done there. So I don't hate the hire, but I just didn't really like the backlash that they received over the Mark Stoops deal. I thought that would have been a good hire, probably not a great hire. I don't think Mark Stoops is like a top tier coach, but he's a really damn good football coach, and we'll see. Time will tell. I have faith that A&M they'll see it through, and we'll see.
He'll
we'll
win
see
10 games and they'll give him $100 million.
Hey,
did
maybe
anybody
Elko
happen to
can
know?
just hire 2 OCs.
Right?
Since that's the
Hey,
popular
yeah,
thing to
that.
do now, just hire 2 guys to do it.
That's a great segue, BP, because our next bit of news does involve my Oklahoma Sooners. They obviously, following that situation at A&M, it was announced on Sunday, I believe, or was it? Yeah, Sunday. Jeff Levy, former offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, he is headed to Stark, Vegas, to be the next head coach for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. This was a name that was pretty much immediately talked about, kind of on that short list when this job first came open. I'll say, fellas, as an Oklahoma fan, I didn't actually anticipate this happening, but I guess here we are for me. Dalt, I'll let you go first since BP did on Elko. What do you think of Levy to Mississippi State?
I don't know. Maybe they just want somebody like Mike Leach in there that runs kind of a sling it around the yard, air raid offense, because they know that in the SEC their defense isn't going to win championships like Arnett thought it was going to. That's obvious this year. You take a guy like who's our quarterback? Will Rogers? Is that his name?
Yes, sir.
He's
you take
entering the portal.
you take a guy like him and tell him to. Yeah, you take a guy like
Is
him.
he really?
Yep. You take a guy like him and you tell him to hand it off 30 times in a game from when he was throwing it 50, and you go, what did they go, like 1-8 in the SEC this year? So I don't know. I mean, I think
wasn't good.
I think Levy will be okay. I think the Egg Bowl just got a little less hostile. I mean, Levy and Kiffin are actually pretty good friends, so I don't know how that's going to go with the way Kiffin and his theatrics happen in that game.
BP, what do you think about this hire?
I don't know because I'm not a real big Levy guy, but then I saw where OU was third in yards and fourth in points. That's correct, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't. Maybe they just want to, like Dalt said, get back to trying to score 50 and hope and pray they find a win. I'm really surprised that he took it and just not knowing any of these OU kids would follow him or a couple of the commits would go with him. That's what I'm surprised about. But I mean, I know Brandon Walker's happy, so
Yeah.
maybe they
That's
got their
all-
guy
that's all
down
that
there in
matters.
Stark Vegas again. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just feel like Mississippi State feels like a reach.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. How good of a job is Mississippi State? I think it's kind of, I would say like a middle of the pack college. I mean, it's an SEC job, so it's hard to say no if you're Lebby in that situation. To me, if he's wanting to take that next step and become a head coach, I think he is a pretty good fit there. Like, it just seems like the kind of guy that they would hire. And I think it can kind of go one of two ways for him. I think he can either maybe have a couple decent years, get him bowl eligible, and then maybe sneak a 8, 9, 10 win season somehow, and he could springboard into a better job, or he may fall flat on his face and find himself as an offensive coordinator again for, probably whatever Power 5 school needs one at the time of his eventual firing. So we'll see how it goes. Fellas, we have a ton of other coaching news that we could talk about, but those are like the two biggest head coaching hires that we probably have currently. So I just wanted to touch really on those two. There obviously has been some other assistant coaching jobs that have been filled. I think Oregon State, they promoted from within, because I guess that's one other one we could talk about is Jonathan Smith. He's going from Oregon State to Michigan State. I know, Dalt, that probably hurts your heart a little bit to see
the Beeve.
Your Beeves they're not only getting left behind by the Pac-12, but now they're getting left behind by their former head coach now in Jonathan Smith, he's going to be on his way to be Michigan State's next coach. So, y'all want to talk playoff rankings, or we want to talk more coaching?
I'm good to move on.
Okay.
Let's get it. Rankings.
Playoff rankings, Dalt. Do you have those in front of you, Dalt?
Yes, sir. Yes, I do.
Okay. Go ahead and
These just dropped, like we said, like 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. Number 1, we have Georgia moving up one spot to number 2 after beating Ohio State is Michigan. Moving up to 3 is Washington. Florida State at 12-0 moves up to 4. Oregon moves up from 6 to 5. Ohio State drops from 2 to 6. Texas remains at 7. Alabama remains at 8. Missouri at 9. And then Penn State at 10. And then just kind of some teams on the outside. Mississippi at 11. OU at 12. And then Louisville drops out of the top, I believe, 10 or 11 to 14 after their loss to Kentucky this week. And at number 15, the Arizona Wildcats. I don't want to leave them out.
So, let's just talk playoff scenarios, because these rankings are there is some potential for some change here, but the committee is kind of playing their hand, I feel like, with this set tonight. Leaving Ohio State at 6 to leave them above Texas and Alabama with no shot to win their conference. I know that they've beat Notre Dame, they beat Penn State, and they lost, close game to Michigan. Could have probably went either way. I think Michigan kind of controlled that game, but your Longhorns, they need a little bit of help, I'm afraid, or they might find themselves next Sunday kind of on the outside looking in. What needs to happen for Texas to get in the playoff?
Florida State losing or Georgia losing to Alabama. I don't think that you're going to get Alabama over Texas. If you do, you will basically be saying that head-to-heads don't matter. I understand that the quote-unquote 4 best teams is the reason for this, but winning games should matter. I understand if Georgia loses that they're probably still one of the best teams in the country, but at the same time they're 12-1, just like Texas would be, just like Alabama would be, just like Oregon would be potentially. So I don't know. I could be dead wrong in this, but I think that if Florida State loses to Louisville, you can't keep Texas out. Like, you can't make a argument for Ohio State when they're not even playing for their conference championship.
Right. Okay. BP, who do you think who do you think is going to be the 4 teams when it's all said and done on Sunday?
Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and I'm not saying Texas no matter what. Texas.
Okay. I
really do. I think if Georgia gets beat, I'm telling you, I really think it'll be Michigan, whoever wins the Pac-12, Bama, and I think both teams would get in, Bama and Georgia.
Man,
I really do. I think they put Georgia in.
I can see that happening.
Oregon out.
I can see that happening, but I just don't know how. I don't know how you justify. Like, I know it was all the way back in week 2, but how do you justify putting Alabama in above Texas if they're both conference champions? Like, yes, I understand that the SEC is a tougher conference than the Big 12. I don't think anybody's going to make that argument. Alabama has, they both have good wins, but Texas has that head-to-head. I think that has to matter to some degree.
But if Alabama wins, wouldn't your argument now become how is Georgia in over Texas?
Yes, that's where I was going to go with that. Is I think Georgia would deserve to get left out. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't care that they're the back-to-back defending national champions. They lost the SEC championship. Like, that there's in a situation in a year where you maybe had a couple of Power 5 teams that had won their conference that already had 2 losses or something of that nature, then you maybe be able to make that argument. But I think, Dalt, for Texas, you just have to be big fans of Louisville this weekend. I think that's all you need is Louisville to beat Florida State, because the Oregon-Washington thing, that's going to take care of itself. Washington is not going to get left in if Oregon beats them. And then obviously if Washington beats Oregon, I just think that there's a really good chance that those top 4 teams, it might be chalk. I think Georgia's going to beat Bama. I think Michigan State's going to absolutely murder Iowa. I think there's a chance Washington beats Oregon again. And then
yes, sir.
I still, even without their starting quarterback, I think Florida State's going to find a way to beat Louisville. Like, because I think Louisville's good. I'm going to be on the Louisville train as much as anybody. You know that. But I just think Florida State is still probably going to be too much for them. And I know they struggled with Florida, but that was, in Gainesville, in the swamp, tough place to play, big rivalry game. I know that probably hurts your heart a little bit with the fact that your Longhorns will have gone, 12-1, won the conference, and they might be on the outside looking in. But that just this potentially could be the first year ever we have 4 undefeated teams in the playoff, and that's I don't think that's ever happened up to this point.
I got a question.
Never.
Okay.
What would the line be in either a Georgia versus Florida State or Michigan versus Florida State game be?
Georgia,
17.
Michigan.
No, Georgia versus Florida State. And then, like, if Michigan was number one, Michigan versus Florida State. I really think it'd be like 14.5 and then 17.5.
Without Travis, I assume, like as is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, as is.
Yeah, I think it's at least 2 touchdowns. Well, I don't know. I could see I could see it around 10, maybe. But you're probably looking at like
I would hammer that 10.
I would say probably 13.5 for probably Michigan, and maybe like 15 for Georgia. And it could be 15
Is there
for both.
any way they beat Louisville and don't get in because of that right there?
I think that
they are not very good.
I think it's a conversation that'll have to be had, yes, because I told y'all I don't necessarily know that I think they should be in without Travis, because I don't know that they're one of the 4 best teams, and that's what this committee allegedly hangs. That's what they hang their hat on with these rankings. I don't know where, how they. With that being said, I don't know how they come up with some of these rankings based on that, but I think that's a conversation that has to be had. But Dalt, you look at. I told you I had a question about Texas. Would you? I think you have the chance to get a good win this weekend against Oklahoma State, obviously, top 20 team currently. But can you willingly say you would rather be playing Oklahoma this weekend with a chance to avenge that loss against a higher ranked team, just for, like, I'm being serious, like it would be a better resume building win.
No, I know.
Correct?
For the argument of saying what Oregon is going to get to do against Washington, it would be better for Texas to be playing OU this weekend. Now, it is not Texas' fault. You guys are slap nuts and lose to Kansas and Oklahoma State. But you're right. It would look better to beat the number 12 team in the country and avenge that loss, just like OU did several times in their runs to the college football playoff. I mean, you look back, Iowa State.
They just did it once.
I think Baylor was one.
No.
Was it just the one time with Iowa State?
Just Texas. Iowa State year they didn't make the playoff.
Okay, so just like they did with Texas. So yes, it would be more advantageous for Texas to be playing OU, but as a fan of Texas, it is nice that y'all aren't there.
I'm sure it is. You might get beat again if they were. But
well, the world will never know.
The world will never know. You're right. Yeah, I wanted to ask that just because there obviously there's much has been made, and BP, you know this as well as anybody, of this conversation with the Big 12 championship. But still, to kind of backtrack around, I think Texas, you just hope for Louisville to win, and I think you're in, no matter what happens with Washington, Oregon.
Yep.
Now, I will say the Georgia, Alabama, that can make it interesting. And, I mean, I guess you could argue that even if Oregon beats Washington, Washington could, still. Now, I'll tell you what gets interesting is Iowa State at 6. I guess in some interesting world where Oklahoma State.
They're trying to get them in. I'm telling you.
If Oklahoma State was to beat Texas, if Washington was to beat Oregon, and if Louisville was to beat Florida State, Ohio State's probably in. I think there's no question about it.
They're in at 4.
Unless the only way,
beats Alabama.
If Alabama beat Georgia, then I would say Georgia would probably stay in above, and Ohio State would probably be 5. But that's probably not.
I think in that scenario, it would be 1 Michigan,
2
2
Bama,
Washington,
or Washington, yeah, yep.
3 Bama, 4 Georgia.
I would agree.
and Georgia would just wax Michigan. Oh, they would wax Michigan.
They might. They've done it
Michigan
once.
is terrible.
Okay.
Michigan is terrible.
Well, the playoff, we've
Terrible.
I don't know that Michigan's terrible. That's quite the take.
Terrible.
But that's really about all I got on the playoff, fellas. Like there are a handful of things that could happen. I guess there could be total chaos. You know, Iowa, they could upset Michigan in some like insane turn of events. I don't really know. But we're gonna just
Michigan
kind
gonna get COVID.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they may all get
That's
like
it.
food poisoning or mono before the game or something.
I think they'd still beat Iowa with food poisoning.
Yeah, they might.
They'd have a chance.
So, Dalt, real quick, we're just going to recap last week since it's somewhat irrelevant, and we'll get kind of we're 20 minutes or so in here. Don't want to be here all night with all the playoff discussion. Real quick on our week 13 recap, Dalt. Neither of us had the best week, and I go 2-4. You go 3-3. I had some chances here. Ohio State let me down. Florida kind of cut me deep with kind of a late backdoor cover by Florida State. But our first game, Dalt, was A&M LSU, and LSU actually had a late cover in that game too. I believe you got excited about that because you did take the Tigers at minus 11.5. I took A&M at plus 11.5. Our other game, one that you missed on, was UTSA. You took them at plus 3.5. I took Tulane. They're looking to win the American for the second straight year, I believe, this coming weekend. Both took Clemson. That one hit against god-awful South Carolina. You took Florida State. That one hit late
Beamer
as well. Yeah, Beamer Ball has the tires have fallen off and are rolling down the hill, and the bus is stationary, I'm afraid, on the Beamer Ball.
That Florida State pick for me was 100% a jinx. I was so bad trying to jinx Florida State last week.
Well, they look
I had one of my Xbox. Yeah, I had one of my Xbox buddies who's a Florida fan back. Man, I can't believe you picked Florida State with a backup quarterback. And I was like, listen, I put some voodoo on that.
Yeah,
Florida
that's
State
fair.
is not good.
Well, they're
without
just,
Jordan Travis, they're not.
They're just not. Yeah, they're just not the same.
Even
team
with
without
him,
Jordan
I don't
Travis.
know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. But to continue, Dalt, we both took Oregon State against Oregon at plus 13.5. That did not hit. Tough. And then we both took Ohio State, and I think we both thought Ohio State was going to win that game. I know I certainly did. Some kind of questionable calls in the game. We can talk about that one a little bit. We had that conversation while it was being played about the touchdown that Michigan scored that we kind of all thought was an interception. Got reviewed. Got the call stood on the field. After watching it back, I kind of feel like that they probably got it right, but maybe could have gone either way. But fellas, is Ryan Day's seat hot or not?
It's hard to say that it would be hot when he goes back-to-back years of 11-1. But losing to Michigan 3 times in a row is unacceptable. I don't know that it's hot because you get into this whole theory of firing Ryan Day, kind of like Texas A&M did with Jimbo. Who are you going to hire?
Yeah.
Like, who are you going to replace that's better than Ryan Day?
Right.
And I don't know that there is a legitimate answer out there. I think something Ryan Day's going to have to look in the mirror with this Michigan game, and he's going to have to kind of just let them hang. And he can't be punting on 4th and 1 from the 48-yard line.
Yeah. Or
you can't be conservative.
Yeah, kind of,
in this game. You have got to go win it.
tried to settle for the field goal there before half instead of really maybe trying to push to go score on that fourth down. I know BP, you made a comment about that during the game. To me, I don't know that I would say his seat is really hot. Now, if you ask Maurice Claret, he needs to be fired like yesterday. I don't know if y'all saw his. I don't know if y'all saw his Twitter post, but he wants Ryan Day gone. I'm not sure, like you said, who he thinks they're going to go hire. But this is a guy that, yes, he's 1-3 now against Michigan, but he has not lost a game against another Big Ten opponent. Now, we can sit here all day and talk about how awful the Big Ten is, but that's pretty impressive, fellas. I mean, I just don't think there's a world where he gets fired. Now, maybe next year you lose to Michigan again. I don't know. I mean, what do you think about it, BP?
My question for Ohio State fans would be, would you rather go 8-4 but beat Michigan, or keep going 11-1?
Right.
Because they were a play away from playing in the national championship game last year.
Right.
Like,
really,
if Marvin Harrison doesn't get hurt, they might beat Georgia.
Well, yeah.
And then if they don't throw an interception at their own freaking 12 this year,
right,
they might play for another. So, I don't know. It's not like Michigan has been a dumpster either. Michigan's been pretty good. So,
well, they've been cheating.
I think it's ridiculous. Well, true. I mean, when you know what's coming, it makes it easier. But would you rather go 9-3 but beat Michigan, or would you rather keep going 11-1? I'd choose 11-1, but hey,
well,
because they could still make the playoff if it's a far-fetched, but. Yeah, we've seen crazier shit happen. So,
well, there's legitimate evidence that they can lose that game and make the playoff. And like we've talked about, me and Dalton on the podcast, they're outside of like Missouri last year. They're literally the only team that came within anywhere near beating Georgia, and they kind of had them beat. I mean, they were up like 15 in the second half of that game, and Georgia was able to come back. Like you said, Marvin Harrison got hurt. So, yeah, I think you're spot on with that. And there probably are some Ohio State fans that might say, yeah, I'd rather go 9-3 and beat Michigan because there is really that much hatred in that rivalry. But I think anybody that says that would kind of be ignorant, in my opinion. But there definitely probably are some that would. But, yeah, to kind of close out this recap, Dalt, you go 3-3. I go 2-4. So that improves our records. You continue to stay 3 games above 500 to finish off the regular season, and you're at 37-35, or 2 games above 500. 37-35. I am 34-38. Not good. Not good. But
you got to get different if you want to catch me this week. You got to get
too many
different.
OU picks.
Oh, come on now. We've barely even picked Oklahoma on this podcast. I think we've picked an OU game like twice. But with that, fellas, we'll get into this. Is it 3 times?
Three times.
Yeah, we did Bedlam. That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
That game didn't happen, so we don't talk about it. We'll get right into this preview. Week 14, championship weekend. We're only going to do our 5 Power 5. I thought about throwing the American in there, but it's kind of irrelevant. It's just not really worth it. I mean, so our first, we're going to pick them kind of in order of them being played because they are all, massive as far as implications go for the playoff. All 5 of them have playoff implications. And our first game, fellas, is in the Pac-12. We've got the Pac-12 championship on Friday night out in Las Vegas. This game's at 7 o'clock, and you've got 5th-ranked Oregon taking on 3rd-ranked Washington in a rematch of what was, I believe, like a Week 7 or 8 game that was played in Washington. Washington won that game on But I guess it wasn't the last second field goal. They scored the touchdown, and Oregon missed the field goal, correct? They won 36-33, I believe.
Missed the tying field goal.
Some really questionable decisions were made in that game by Lanning. I remember talking about that specifically. But Oregon, even though they lost that game in the regular season, playing pretty good football, fellas. They come in here as a 9.5-point favorite in what is a rematch. I guess, Dalt, I'll let you go first, and then we'll get BP's thoughts. What way are you leaning on this one, Dalt? I know you probably have an idea of what you want, who you want to win, but who do you like here? Do you like Oregon at -9.5, or are you thinking Washington?
Bo Nix has been a wagon. Bo Nix is winning the Heisman. Like, I know, BP, I know you have money on Penix, but Bo Nix is winning the Heisman. He's only thrown 2 interceptions all year, 37 touchdowns. Now, if you listen to the CFP committee, the reason that Oregon's above Texas is because he's 78% completion percentage.
Correct.
I would be too if I was throwing tunnel screens to Bucky Irvin for 75 yards to play. No, I think Oregon's a very good team, and I think they will probably win this game because Washington's defense has gotten better, but it still is very shaky. But I'm going to take Washington plus 9.5 here.
Okay. BP, I have a feeling you love Washington here.
Yeah, you guys already know I'm on Washington, but aside from me having money on that, like, I do think there's something to be said for winning close game after close game after close game. I don't know. It almost feels like it's just one of those years where it doesn't look pretty, but somehow they just keep finding a way to win. So that and Michael Penix, he can spin it. So you're only 2 turnovers by Oregon away from you give Washington 2 extra possessions, and I know Oregon's really good, but I'm going to take Washington. And this is the first time Washington's been the underdog all year. So he'll get them going. So I'm taking the Huskies.
Well, I picked Washington to win the Pac-12. We talked about this, Dalton. Went back and listened to our previews this week. We didn't do so good on our predictions, but hey, got a couple things right, but not many. I'm going to take Oregon -9.5. And honestly, the only reason I need it, Dalton. I need to catch back up. I think Oregon can win this game by 10. Maybe a late cover, like, they're up 3 or 4, score a late touchdown, win by 10 or 11. I think that's very plausible. I think Oregon is probably playing better football right now, but I don't know that you can definitively say one of these teams is any better than the other. Oregon is maybe a more complete team, but I don't really think Oregon's that great defensively either. And they've played a much worse schedule than Washington in that conference. Now, the Pac-12 was really good early on, but it's kind of faded late with USC kind of falling apart. Utah's kind of falling apart. UCLA kind of fell apart towards the end. Both of these teams beat Oregon State, but I'm going to take Oregon, just trying to get a game back on you, Dalt. So I'm going to take the Ducks at -9.5, and we'll move on. And this game's going to be a fun one to talk about, fellas. We head into Saturday, and the rooster kick on Saturday, as it always is. I know neither of you two are real familiar with being in this game lately, but it is at 11 a.m. And
here we go.
We've got the Big 12 championship between Dalton's.
It's been a minute since OSU has, hadn't it?
OSU's been in it more recently than OU has.
I was about to say, but hey, what do I know?
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway.
I haven't been there in a while, so just.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
Nice. It's nice, I'll say that.
We've got the Big 12 championship, fellas. The 7th-ranked Texas Longhorns are taking on the 18th-ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys. Texas coming in with playoff aspirations, 11-1. OSU, obviously, massive year for Mike Gundy, and kind of how things started up there in Stillwater. Not sure anybody would have predicted them to be in this position after that South Alabama game, or even after Iowa State when they fell to 2-2. But here they are. They've got three wins against ranked opponents. I think that's about as many as anybody has in the country. They probably have the best running back in the country in Ollie Gordon. But Texas comes in right now as a 14.5-point favorite in the Big 12 championship game. So, BP, I let Dalton go first on the last one. I'm gonna let you cook. What do we got here? We liking the fighting Gundys or?
I love them. I don't want the points. I want OSU money line all day.
Fair enough. In all seriousness,
screw the points. I'm going to be pissed off if they cover the spread. I want them to win the game.
Well, sure, yeah, as any fan would. But BP, give me Oklahoma State's path to winning this football game.
So the non-bias in me, Texas, particularly Quinn, he would have to play. He'd have to play bad, like 2 or 3 interceptions, and OSU would have to. Bowman in particular would have to play out of his mind. Texas is not very good in the secondary, are they?
They're not very good at safety.
Kind of average, yeah.
So I really don't think that helps OSU a lot because that's not their game. I would love to say Ollie's going to rush for 200, but that's OSU's strength is Texas's strength. So, as bad as I want OSU to win, OSU would have to play extremely well, and Texas would have to gift them some turnovers and some big penalties here and there. So,
Dalt, thoughts?
Well, the turnovers are going to, or not the turnovers, the penalties are going to be there.
Right.
I would be surprised if OSU gets called for 1 in this game. Your mark is going to be on the sideline looking like Mr. Burns, just excellent. but no, it's going to be intriguing. OSU, there's a path for OSU to win this. Like you said, if Quinn has a bad game, and if Ollie Gordon and Bowman play extremely well. But like you said, strength on strength. I don't think Ollie Gordon's going to have the game of his life on the ground. But I will say, the more I've thought about it, Gundy will use Texas's very aggressive front 4 against themselves. He will run a ton of running back screens to Ollie Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
He will try to do everything he can to get Ollie Gordon in space. PK has to be ready for that. Receiver-wise, the only matchup problem, I think, is Presley. I think Presley is faster than any of our corners. They use him in the slot a lot. I don't think Juday's that great in speed coverage. And if we end up getting him caught on a safety, he's gonna run by any of our safeties outside of maybe the freshman, and he's just not great in coverage. So I just don't trust Bowman. I think that Texas is going to make Bowman beat him, and a guy that has 11 interceptions to 10 touchdowns on the year, I can't trust him to go win a game of this magnitude. And OSU's defense hasn't been great. They are
not good on defense.
They are very opportunistic. They do force a lot of turnovers, but when they don't get that turnover, you see games like when they played UCF or South Alabama, where it's just it can get out of hand fast. And I think that if Texas can take care of the football and run the ball, I don't think there's really any chance for Oklahoma State to win this game. So give me Texas minus 14.5 just to take Texas, because when this game was first announced and it was like 10.5, I was like, yes. And then we get to today and it's like 3 scores. I'm like, shit.
Okay. Can I give my thoughts on this game now?
Hey, you're going to be at
go
home
ahead.
enjoying a nice, relaxing Saturday of stress-free football, brother.
So, I talked to a guy at work about it today. I don't see many paths for Oklahoma State to win this game. However, I do think that it's possible. I mean, they're not a terrible football team, but I don't think they're a great team. I think Oklahoma State's going to need a game kind of like Bedlam, where they have some very opportune turnovers at really good times, whether they force them or not. Kind of like in that Bedlam game, you had a couple just weird snaps, but they need 2 or 3 turnovers. And, you look at Texas, only game they lost was to Oklahoma. The one thing that Oklahoma really hurt your Longhorns on in that game, Dalt, was Dylan Gabriel running the football. Oklahoma State does not have that at quarterback. Alan Bowman cannot run, and he really can barely pass, if we're being honest.
He's a big boy. He's a chunky boy.
So I think Oklahoma State, to me, kind of like you talked about with the screens, I think they want to get Ollie. Like, they obviously want to try to establish a run game, but I just don't know that they're going to have a lot of success doing it. Now, I think in a perfect world, if Oklahoma State maybe got the ball first, could go down and score, then get one of those timely turnovers and maybe go up 10-0 or 14-0, like, you may be able to try and run the ball, really establish the run with a 2-touchdown lead, if that's what was to happen. But I think offensively, I like the screen game. I like, a lot of side-to-side stuff against that Texas front that is very impressive, but it's not very fast. You got, if you're moving side to side, a lot of tempo, you're going to wear Sweat down. You're going to wear Byron Murphy down. Oklahoma kind of did that in that game against Texas. There were several plays where Sweat, the play got by him, and he's, he's sucking air, and that happened. I don't know that Oklahoma State can do that. They aren't really a tempo team, but that may be something that they try. I don't know. I don't know if you don't really try new things in these positions. You dance with what brought you. So we'll see. But I think Texas wins this game, but I like Oklahoma State plus 14.5. I think it's just a classic spot for Texas being that big of a favorite. I think they win, but I don't think they win by more than 2 touchdowns. And I could be wrong. Texas is playing really good right now. They just absolutely hammer Tech, and Oklahoma State not playing their best football probably.
Everything runs through Lubbock.
Oklahoma State not playing their best ball with, the scare they had in Houston up until the second half. And then, BYU took them to double overtime in Stillwater last week. So, I don't know how good Oklahoma State feels, but hey, Mike Gundy absolutely has owned Texas the last 10 years. So we'll see. We'll see. I have to imagine he, has some confidence in that. But I like OSU plus 14.5. So if you guys, are we sure we're ready to move on? And we'll move on. Did you guys get it all out?
It's all out.
It's all out.
Okay. We're going to head over to the SEC. SEC Championship. Massive game, 3 o'clock, CBS. Number 1 Georgia taking on the 8th-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. I think it's safe to say this is a win and you're in type of game as far as the playoff is concerned. But Georgia comes in here as a 6-point favorite. I think this line started around 5, and it's kind of went up for Georgia. So, Dalt, who do you like here?
Jalen Milroe better get into the best shape of his life, because this Georgia front is going to be at his neck from the jump. This is an Alabama offensive line that has been porous at times. I mean, you look at giving up 5 sacks to Texas, and Texas isn't near the front that Georgia is. You look at the game against Auburn this weekend. Auburn was after him all night too, and they choose to rush 2 guys on 4th and 31 for some stupid reason. If they would have lit him up, if they had brought 5, they win the game. But that's beside the point. I like Georgia. I think that Carson Beck is playing extremely well. He has all of his weapons. And this game isn't going to be won by a quote-unquote run game. This game's going to be won by which quarterback can make the most plays. And I just think that Georgia's going to be better protecting Carson Beck than what Alabama is Jalen Milroe. And I think this could be a touchdown game. And Georgia kind of wins. But I just don't think that Milroe's going to be able to make the plays he made to get to this point.
PP, Georgia or Bama?
I'm taking Georgia. I just not sure Jalen Milroe is going to make enough plays through the air to beat Georgia. I mean, Georgia may put 7 or 8 guys in the box and just go straight and literally just dare Alabama to throw it every play. So,
Right.
that and Carson Beck, I looked at his stats earlier when it was official I was coming on. He's thrown for like 3,500 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I know Tim said something about him being a Heisman candidate. I did not know he's had that good of a year. So,
Very quiet.
and I think Georgia is finally Bowers is healthy again. So I really wouldn't be surprised if we turn this game on and Georgia's up 2-3 scores. I think Georgia best team in the country again. So
Yeah.
give me Kirby.
My old buddy from work, who's an Alabama fan, is not going to enjoy this episode of the pod because I'm also going to take Georgia -6. If it was over 7, I may take Bama, but with it being right there at 6, I don't disagree with you, BP. I think that Georgia could maybe win this game going away because I do think they're gonna absolutely dial it up on Milroe as far as pressure. And Georgia is one of the few teams in the country that they can do that and still cover in the back end because they're just that good everywhere. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say Georgia's not beatable, but I mean that, like you said, I think Georgia's the best team in the country. I think they're the odds-on favorite to win again and probably three-peat as national champions. Something that I don't even know when it was last done or if it's ever even been done. But
I do not think that's ever been done.
Yeah. I mean, I know several teams have been back-to-back, but it's just really impressive what Kirby Smart has built at Georgia. And I like them a lot at -6. I just don't think, I think there's obviously a way for Alabama to win this game, but I like Georgia -6. I can't pick against Georgia. I picked against them like once this year, and it didn't work out for me. So I'm going to take the Bulldogs at -6. So I'll give us all Georgia at -6, and we'll move right along.
That was when we thought Kentucky was going to beat Georgia. Y'all remember that dumb take?
Yeah. We won't talk about it, but we'll move on, fellas. Head over to the Big Ten. This one's probably going to be a pretty quick discussion. The second-ranked Michigan Wolverines, they're heading to Indianapolis. They're heading over to Indianapolis to take on the 16th-ranked, fraudulent 10-2 Iowa Hawkeyes. And Michigan comes in here as a 23.5-point favorite. I'm not sure if you guys I saw this on social media, but Iowa's first half point total prediction right now is at 0.5 point. Saw that earlier on social media. So that's good.
Yep.
Do we all like Michigan -23.5? Do we all like Michigan?
Well, hold on, Tim. You're going to have to. Hold on a second. You're going to have to pick against me on one of the next 2 games. You understand this, right? If you want to
This
beat me,
ain't the game, Tim.
if you want to play to win the game, you've got to pick against me on one of the next two games. I'm
Dalton.
taking Michigan minus 23.5 because I was not scoring.
Dalton, that's easy. We're picking Louisville next. Like, of course. Are you going to take Louisville?
I know, I'm taking Louisville.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
BP, you like Michigan minus 23.5?
Yeah, what is Iowa's team total for the whole game? Do you know?
I don't know. I just
Because I
happen
saw
to
on
be
Twitter where
1 point.
I saw on Twitter where it was 6.5 for the whole game.
I would bet the farm on the under.
I think Michigan in a rout.
The over-under is 35.5. And
yeah,
Michigan's going to have to do it by themselves.
I think Michigan probably wins this game kind of like Ohio State did against Wisconsin back in the Cardell Jones year, where they win that game like 55-0 or something like that. Just obliterated. So I think that's very possible. You could be looking at that. It's not going to be pretty. So I will give us all Michigan minus 23.5. I don't really think there's much more to be said on that. So with that,
I got something, Tim.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The Big 12 has taken a lot of crap this year about their conference championship game, and rightfully so. You can't just start making rules, but what the Big Ten has done for years to people for their conference championship game is criminal.
Yeah. I mean,
with having those three teams in the same division to play Iowa or Wisconsin. It's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, you used to have that across the board. Pac-12, Big 12, SEC even. You had divisions. All these conferences had divisions. You had the North and the South and the Big 12. Same with the Pac-12. You had North and South. ACC, you had the Coastal and the Atlantic divisions. But most conferences have gone away with that because they want their two quote-unquote best teams kind of following that original Big 12 model that they went with when they reinstated the game back in 2017. But I agree. I mean, it does suck that you've got two really good teams and then, a kind of good average team in Penn State, all in that one division in the Big Ten. And then, Iowa, man, I don't understand it. It's a team that they have a great head coach that, he's had teams that have been on the threshold of the playoff. I mean, let's not forget Iowa was 12-0 that one year that they got beat by Michigan State on basically at the end of the game in the Big Ten championship. But their inability to really grow offensively has just totally hamstrung that program. And I'm telling you, the worst. There are some really bad football programs in college football, but it might be the worst in the country to be a fan of the Iowa Hawkeyes because you have a 10-2 football team that's really just not very good. Like, they're just not.
0.5 points in the first half. That is awesome.
Right. So
that is unbelievable.
With that, we'll move on. Typically, this is where our game of the week would be, Dalt, but we're not going to have a game of the week this week because these games are all so important. It takes us into our final conference championship that we're going to predict tonight or pick, and that's the 14th ranked Louisville Cardinals coming off their loss against arch rival Kentucky a week ago. They're taking on the 4th ranked undefeated 12-0 Florida State Seminoles, who are without obviously quarterback Jordan Travis, who suffered that lower leg injury 2 weeks ago in that game. Florida State, though, comes in here as a 2.5 point favorite. And Dalton, I know you said you're taking Louisville. Why are you taking the Cardinals at plus 2.5?
My jinx didn't work last week. I truly think that this is a Louisville team that has the capability of playing really good defense. Now, have they played the likes of Keon Coleman or Johnny Wilson? No, they haven't. But this was a really competitive game last year. I want to say that Louisville almost beat Florida State last year. I think it come down to the last 2 or 3 drives of the game, and the Plummer kid's had a good year. He's almost thrown for 3,000 yards. He's been a little bit of a turnover machine, but the Jordan kid at running back's good. I think they're going to try to lean on him. So give me Louisville plus 2.5.
Okay. BP, who you like
And I
here?
just don't trust the backup quarterback.
I'm going to take Louisville. I think they can win the game too, but I'll definitely take the points. I watched that Florida game, one because the quarterback that played for Florida is from Lincoln Christian, and I just do not think Florida State is very good without Jordan Travis. Florida is horrible on defense. Like, they brought up the graphic of Florida's defensive rankings and everything, and they were all like 120th and above. And they still could not move the ball. So
224 total yards in that game, BP, for Florida State.
I mean, and that's with Coleman and the other big receiver they got. So that, and I really do not want to watch this Florida State team in a playoff. So
Me neither, BP.
I can see the pain on Tim's face that he has to take Florida State.
Oh no! No!
I just lined up in the victory formation.
Tim said,
you.
"Screw the standings."
Let me tell you, you want to reference that game a year ago, Dalt. Let it not be forgotten. One Tate Rodemaker came in that game and played, and is partially the reason they won that game. Had 2 fourth-quarter touchdown passes to win that game 35-31 last year against Louisville. Now, that was last year, not the same team, whatever, that's fine. But we've got another week of practice under the belt with the ones. He's going to be ready to go. I like Florida State to win this game by more than 2.5. As much as I love my Louisville Cardinals, who have far outperformed what I could have ever began to imagine. I said they were a sleeper in the ACC. They were more than a sleeper. They were one of the 2-3 best teams. They're playing for the conference championship. I mean, hell, there was a case to be made before they lost to Kentucky. They might have been playing for a playoff spot this week had they not lost that game to Kentucky. I think we could all agree that would have been very unlikely, but might have been possible. But not just to be different, Dalt, I think I was probably going to take Florida State here anyway, because I think the quarterback's going to make just enough plays. I think Louisville may make some mistakes. People, you still got to remember they are under a first-year coach, Jeff Brom, who I know he's been a head coach for a long time, so it's not like a first-time head coach. But I just think Florida State, they're going to make the plays to win this game, and they're going to win this game by at least a field goal, maybe by a touchdown. So I'm going to take the Noles at minus 2.5, and we'll see. We're going to ride it, and we're going to see where it goes. That's all I have to say. So real quick, fellas, we will recap our 5 games. We picked the Pac-12 championship. You guys both like Washington at plus 9.5. I'm taking the Oregon Ducks at minus 9.5. In the Big 12 championship, me and BP both like the Oklahoma State Cowboys at plus 14.5. Dalton, you're taking your Longhorns at minus 14.5. Good luck. SEC championship, we both like Georgia at minus 6. Big 10 championship, whatever, Michigan minus 23, obviously. And then in the ACC, I'm taking the Florida State Seminoles at minus 2.5. And then you two are taking my Louisville Cardinals at plus 2.5. Fellas, we have reached the end of the season. It's gone by quickly. I'm just going to say I'm disappointed my team's not playing this weekend, but I'm off this weekend, so I'm going to enjoy some football, kind of stress-free, see where it takes me. It's going to be a good time. I'm going to make the best of it. Real quick disclaimer to any Oklahoma fans that listen to this podcast. I will not be cheering for Texas this weekend. Let me make that perfectly clear. And I put this on Twitter. If you're an Oklahoma fan and you are cheering for Texas just for the sake of the fact that we're going to the SEC together, whatever, Big 12 hates us, no. Reevaluate your fandom. Because Oklahoma fans do not cheer for Texas. I don't care if it's football, basketball, chess, tiddlywinks. I'm not pulling for Texas. It's not happening. Now, I'm also going to say I'm not rooting for Oklahoma State either, but I want Texas to lose. So I'll leave it at that. Do you guys have anything else you want to add
sounds like a cheerleader.
Do we have anything else that we need to add before we get out of here?
Not
sir.
off the top of my head.
All right.
Can't wait for Saturday.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I know it.
BP, we appreciate you for coming on tonight. You're obviously our only guest that we've ever had on, and you're a repeat guest. We obviously enjoy you coming on and talking college football. We love to do it. Know you enjoy it. We talk about college football pretty much every day in the group chat. So
every day.
With that, Dalt, the season has come to a close as far as regular season. We'll see how this all shakes out as far as the playoffs concerned. Maybe try. I don't know if we'll be able to get episode Sunday or not, but we'll definitely get
Sunday.
We'll definitely get another episode
Sunday
once.
Night.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to be freezing on my back porch with a stogie.
Art and D, baby, gotta have it.
Art and D.
Once our playoff is set, we will be back with another episode. But we hope you guys have a fun and safe weekend. Enjoy some college football. And BP, Dalt, if you guys do not have anything else to add, then I guess we will be back when we're back. And we're out.
Don't forget to cover the flats.
Go Pokes.
Get out of here with that nonsense.